There. Great. Okay, and we are recording. Great. Okay, so it'll take a few more minutes for attendees to roll in, but what a crazy Wednesday, guys. Welcome to another one of our night talks. We're all looking a little frazzled. Everyone looks amazing. It's just been one of those crazy days, crazy few days. We do have some exciting stuff to share with you tonight. And I'll kick it over to Emily in just a second, but as usual, if you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A box, or you can ask them in the chat window. I'll be looking at Facebook when I can. So if you're not getting your question answered on Facebook, jump over to Zoom and you can ask your question that way, okay? Thank you so much for joining us. Emily, I'll kick it over to you.
Yeah, great. Hi, everyone. And again, Anna's right. So we are currently sitting with the announcement of being able to move our industry forward in a big way, I think. At the same time, we are in the left-hand corner watching the Senate, who prepares to vote on the PPP program, which we have, I think, just worked so hard on. And I think sometimes in life, there's things that just you really want so badly for your members. And this is one of those. I know what it's going to mean. And as a TRA, we know. And so if you see me keep looking over, that's because that's going on too. And we feel positive. But I think most important for all of you right now is that today Governor Abbott updated the protocols for restaurants and bars. And I want to be really clear, it was throughout the conversations I've had with his office, but also with the head of the strike force that directly commented on how well the restaurants have followed the protocols. When people from leadership have been out and about, they can't say enough about what the restaurants have done. And I don't want to lose that in tonight's message, because I think it's a lot of the reason of why we've got some of the expansion today, but also why we're really the only full industry to go to 75% on the 12th of June. And so, you know, lots of good discussions. The last two nights, we had a lot more discussions. I will say to you before I pitch it to Kelsey to kind of walk through some of the high points, you know, our recommendation was to reduce that 6 feet. And then once we got below 4 feet, that we would actually be able to put a partition in place. The medical team has been just lockstep with Governor Abbott and the strike force this entire time. That's really what we wanted to see, but the medical data and the medical team would not support that. 6 feet of social distancing is really the standard across the entire US. And so that's then when we went back to, I think what we've become quite good at is getting really creative and thinking through and talking through, well, how do we, you know, push those tables closer together, keep the distance to give people more square footage, but also is there other things that we can be doing? So Kelsey will walk you through, and then we'll also hit some of the other things that are outside of this, like gaming and ballet, others that are kind of buried within here. But for all of you to know that that 6 feet can be reduced now with the partition, and you can get all your booths back. Get all that ready to go, and really think as a restaurant owner now that if social distancing is here to stay, let's say 6 months, 1 year longer, that partition is something that's going to become part of your reality. So thinking creatively about how you can have that be part of your reality today, I think is going to help you move forward quicker and probably more comfortably, because I don't think in all my dialogue that anything's going to change anytime soon. So again, I'm so grateful, because lock arms with the governor's office on this is just going to really help us step forward to that goal we set out. If the numbers hold by early July, we're back to 100%. And so that's the path we're on. So I'm going to let Kelsey turn it over. I'll stop talking. You can tell I'm excited just because anytime we move, adding more customers, that's a good thing for all of us. So thanks for being here, and please type your questions, because we have had probably 2 hours head start to dig into all this, and you know, want to make sure you have the right information as you go back tomorrow.
Yeah, hi everyone. Kelsey Erickson-Streifert, Vice President of Government Relations and Advocacy for the Texas Restaurant Association. Today is really a huge step forward for restaurants and for bars. As Emily mentioned, we've been talking to the governor's office very frequently about how we can safely expand the service of restaurant and bars. The 6 feet distancing, as Emily said, you know, we understand that that's the CDC standard and that that's important to prevent the spread of COVID-19, but it was creating real problems for our restaurants in particular, because they weren't able to expand beyond about 50% and keep that 6 foot distancing requirement. And so that's really where we got creative and talked to the governor's office about what are the alternative ways we can keep people safe and get more customers in our doors to serve. So that's really where this idea of partitions came from. So a couple big updates today. Both restaurants and bars can now seat parties up to 10. That's critical, especially for larger families. We've heard several anecdotes about that coming up. So now that is cleared up. In addition, restaurants can use all of their booths, provided that they have a partition between them that goes up to 6 feet from the ground. So that's critical because many of these restaurants have a lot of booths that are bolted down into the floor, and so they weren't able to utilize them at all with the 6 feet requirement. So this gives them a lot more opportunity to use those spaces. Similarly, tables should be 6 feet apart, or they can go down to 4 feet if they have a partition between them that's at least 6 feet tall and 6 feet wide. So that's critical for our smaller spaces that really need to fit more tables in them to even get up to 50%, much less to get to the 75% that we're allowed to move to, as Emily said, on June 12th. So those are some of the key spacing changes. It's important to note that all of the health screening, the regular cleaning and disinfection, using disposable and single-use condiments and menus, all of that remains in place. So there's still lots of protocols and procedures in place to make sure that employees and customers are getting what they need, but they're also staying safe at the same time. A few other really exciting steps forward. Emily, yeah?
All right, I just want to jump on just really 2 quick things. One is on the 6 feet by 6, because some people may say, like, where did that come from? So as we were talking through, one of the concerns, right, is if you're sitting at a table and you're going back and forth, and that may be that space could be 4 feet, but when you put the person to person, the spread from table to table, that's really where that came from. And we also were kind of thoughtful about a 6 by 6 is a much easier cut and more standard for plexiglass. This can be, think of partition as you can hang a sheet, you can put a screen up. There's lots of creativity that you can use. And I know, and let me just be really clear, guys, we are not trying to sell you something because we think it's just going to be great for your restaurant. Like, I know this is not what you all want, but at the same time, it's really important because it's stepping us back through that same process. So I think that I just want to make sure people know that 6 by 6 was actually logic to it. It wasn't just a random number.
Before we continue on, I just want to step in real quick because we've been watching this on the side. The Senate has just passed by unanimous consent the PPP Fixes bill.
That's so awesome.
That's amazing. High five, team. High five, team.
Oh, I might cry. Oh, this is great news.
Okay, keep going. Kelsey.
Okay, wow, so that was exciting. Other things I missed. So bars are allowed to immediately move to 50% occupancy. Previously, they were at 25%. So that's a huge step forward. Restaurants are still at 50%, but can move to 75% on June 12th. As Emily said, we're really the first industry to get that green light. And it's a testament to the fact that restaurants have been proactive, engaged, and following the rules. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And let's keep that up because that really is making all the difference in the world. Some other things that are going to be really helpful for both restaurants and bars is that valet services can reopen. There are quite a few specific requirements around face masks, gloves, sanitation. So any business that's reopening valet needs to make sure they read that list of protocols very carefully. But again, it's a step forward, especially for our restaurants and bars that are in downtown areas that don't have access to a lot of parking. This really opens up another avenue for them and their customers. Also video games and interactive amusements. So think pool tables, think video arcades. All of those activities can also be reopened effective immediately. Again, there's specific sanitation protocols. Restaurants and bars need to designate someone to be the person in charge of making sure they get sanitized regularly. And there's some distancing requirements. But again, these are all, sort of the same things that restaurants have already been implementing and bars successfully. And so this is just one more opportunity to bring in customers, to serve customers, and rebuild your business. So really great positive steps forward. Would not have been possible without restaurants and bars being good actors and without us engaging so closely with the governor's team. So we just really appreciate their willingness to listen to us and to get creative with us And we think these are really big steps forward, especially with that PPP news, which is so great to hear. So I'll kick it back to Emily over there.
Well, we do have a couple questions we can address if you want, Emily, unless you want to talk about something else.
No, I would love to. And then what I want, if anybody is interested, I know so many of our restaurants and bars, I do have the changes. And if someone just asked, what are the changes? And so I actually have them here. And so I can tell you what they are. And then I maybe give a little bit of background on what happened today, because I think for a lot of people, there's been a tremendous amount of horse trading on this bill and a lot of activity. And so my sigh of relief is just more for all of us that just wanted this so bad. And so it is great news, and I'll walk you through it. Let's get through the opening, and then we'll go to the PPP.
Okay, so we have a question actually on Facebook, and it comes from Harlan, but it's related to something that someone else is asking as well, on information on when restaurants and bars can move away from disposable menus and single-use condiments while allowing guests to grab their own napkins and silverware.
Yep. So so actually I got one of the things that we talked about was moving to being able to sanitize after each use, right? So if you have a menu, and so what's happened is I had a dialogue. It was actually kind of a funny conversation, right? Because we keep asking for stuff, which is really what we're here for, right? That's our job. And so I think that could be something that we could, the menu side, get that done in the next maybe the next week, just not to overpromise. But we made the case. We do know as of today, the medical team is talking about it. Really, I made two things. The expense is exorbitant, and from an environmental standpoint, it's not smart. You're printing and throwing away menus after each person who touches it, when there's other items we can self-sanitize. And so I think on the menu part, I feel pretty comfortable that we've made a really good case that we can get that changed, even within, like I said, the next week. And then there isn't any limitation right now, Kelsey, right? Where if you've got straws, or there's nothing written in that says that you can't, like if you were to go right now to a Quick Trip, right? All that stuff is still out there. There wasn't any change on buffets in this round, so you still have to serve for the customer. But I think on the menu and some of the self items that need to be disposable, I think we can get to sanitize after use, which will bring costs down, frankly, and help just from a environmental impact.
So just to underscore that, on the buffets, they still have to be served by the—
Correct. Yep, they did not make any changes.
Okay, and then the other question that's lingering up here is playgrounds. Any update on playgrounds?
Yes.
No, actually, on that one, I think we need to clarify it, because the way that the language is written, it says "and interactive amusements" when talking about video games. I think we'll just get a quick clarifying point and then get that out to all y'all.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's outdoor stuff in here, right, Kelsey? There's things on outdoor camps, there's religious services, there's all sorts of other categories in here. I think playgrounds, amusements, playgrounds, water parks, but you know what, you're right, Joe. Let's get clarification, because I think the challenge they're going to have is, let's think about your restaurant that has an indoor playscape. How would you sanitize after each child's played? I think that's just where I think they're going to come down. And so I think that the playground part of it, because it's multiple people and not just one person, I think that's where the issue is going to be. So, but just to be sure we always give you the right information, Joe, we can just do a quick note to the governor's office and ask.
Well, and it's the same sort of deal, right, as buffets, really. It's multiple people touching the same thing. That happens on playgrounds too. So yeah, it's a little different.
Yeah, that's really one of the biggest things we're trying to control for in this COVID environment, right? Is every time someone touches something, if they haven't been good about disinfecting and cleaning their hands, that's where the potential to spread is.
Yeah, no, that's totally true, Kelsey. I'm looking on Facebook too to make sure we're answering questions for those folks too. Self-service drink stations.
Those were never required to be shut down, so I think those can stay open. Just be careful, right, about anything where multiple people are going to touch the same item. Got to be really diligent about disinfecting that surface. So, if there's straws and lids out, right, you've got to assume that container is getting touched by multiple people over and over. So. Allowed to be open, but really exercise caution and common sense.
Yeah, it definitely can be open. I think that's important, because we've seen some inconsistency of people thinking they can or can't, but you can definitely keep it open. And I think if you were to hand people the silverware as one example, so they're not reaching into the same bin, but then they took a cup, that single use, and sat down, there should be no issue. And as Kelsey said, sanitize early and often. I think that's the rule.
Yeah, that's a good rule to keep to. All right, just checking to see about other
Well,
questions. Go ahead, Kelsey.
I'd add to that too. It also helps establish customer trust, right? When they see an employee regularly walking around sanitizing, that goes a long way towards building that relationship with the customer.
It's true.
And someone just asked, is there a recommended material? And I think this is what's really great. There's not, right? So I think because we've been doing so much searching on this as we're working through with the strike force, I've got more plexiglass ads in my social media feeds and screens and partitions. So the reason the word partition there is divider is to really leave it up to you. And so, I would just say, if I can pass any tip along, it would be that I really think this is here to stay for quite a while. We posted in one of our newsletters examples of booths. We had one of our really big restaurant operators send us last night a number of examples of what that would look like to have the booths done the way they are. And then we have some examples of different screens and different usage that you can do. So what we can commit to, I think, Anna, is collecting all this, and then we can send it out to you. I do believe anytime there's a massive need, there's a new business opportunity. So I don't think it's going to be long before people are in this space very aggressively creating the kind of things that you need. They could be advertisements on them. There's lots of ways this can go, but I would just be thoughtful not to do something that maybe lasts a week or two and then you have to replace it. I think the runway is going to be longer. And so I just want you to be thoughtful about that. But we will absolutely pull what we see as best practice and send it and post it or send it out in our nightly messages.
And also add on cleaning supplies, really make sure you're following the directions, especially if you're mixing or diluting. And then there's also specific rules about sort of how long that cleaner needs to be on the surface to actually disinfect. So I know, it gets tedious when you have to clean something over and over and over again, but it's important to make sure you're following whatever the guidelines are for the product.
Mm-hmm. And I want to touch on events, because events were also called out. And I think we probably have restaurants that have catering operations or for weddings. And right now you can go up to 500, 499 without getting any special permission. And then once you get to a gathering of 500 or more, you have to get local, which is either, Kelsey, the judge, health department. It's
the judge or mayor, basically.
Judge or mayor.
Yep.
And those are for outdoor events, to be clear.
Yeah, so if you had an outdoor wedding, let's hope, I just wish it was sort of February, right, and not June. But you had an outdoor wedding and you had 499 people, you can have that today, following all the things that are within the guidelines. But I think that's really good news for a lot of people that have been trying to think about how do you have an event. For a lot of our folks that are caterers, you can still maybe utilize outdoor space and keep people attending these events. And then over 500, you would just work. And that's really also thinking about 4th of July parades, I think were called out in the communication, 4th of July gatherings. I think that's what they were really thinking about too, is we know those things, we want them to happen safely. And so, but this should be good news for our caterers, I hope.
I think it's also good news, one of the things we've been talking about internally at TRA is, since we are going to have to adjust to social distancing and many of these procedures for the long haul, how do restaurants get creative with their business model? So we've been talking about, block parties and other kind of outdoor events. And so having this protocol out there, I think, is very helpful to get creative with those business opportunities.
And for those of you who have venues and you're wondering about things on the inside, there is specific guidance. It's actually categorized as wedding reception venues, but really it's any of you who have an event venue space. Those have changed to also reflect the increase to 10 at a table or within a party, and maintaining the 6-foot distance. It does not allow for using partitions. So if you have an open space where you can host various events, you can continue to operate at 50% capacity, 10 per table, 6 feet apart.
Hey guys, could you just do one more draw? I want to draw attention between the table and the booth partition thing, because we're getting some questions elsewhere about that. So if Kelsey, do you mind just giving it one more time? If you have booths, how can you use them?
So for restaurants with booths, they can use any booth, no matter how close they are in distance, as long as there is a partition between them that is 6 feet high from the ground.
And I've been thinking about that, right? So, and tonight, let's include it again, or we can even put it in our Facebook chat now, the one we put 2 nights ago. But you have, booths are back to back, and then right above you, you may just have to have something that goes across to make sure you're 6 feet from the ground.
Right.
Okay. Do we want to talk about PPP now?
Yeah.
I know now it's like the moment to talk about it. Get water, Joe.
Yeah, so this is, I think what's super interesting about this is, I think you all know where it started, but I think it is just such a great story because we listened to all of you and you said we need to change. This program's great, but it's not going to work the way it is. And for a number of reasons is no one could anticipate this time period extending for so long, right? So we thought employees would be back, would be thriving. No one imagined we'd be in June in this situation. So, it's a good bill. It's really been a blessing for everyone, right? But we need a different term. So, sorry guys, the 5 things that have sort of been changed, and I'm going to give you a little bit of history. And if there's any way Joe could get me a glass of water, since we're actually kind of in the same house as we're working offsite. The high points are that the biggest thing you want to hear me say, especially the folks that have their 8-week covered period ending this week, is that it has now been extended for 24 weeks. That means you have 24 weeks instead of 8. And that is significant for a number of reasons. And one of the things people wanted the most. Also, the 75-25 has moved to 60-40. That means you can use 40% on other things besides payroll. And again, it's acknowledging what's happening right now with people being home, not being able to bring people back due to capacity issues and more. Loan forgiveness on FTEs. And what that means is if you get somebody who can't come back, because they're, don't want to work, they're afraid, or they just say no, that will no longer count against your forgiveness. If you take out a loan, so today's 2-year with a 6-month grace period, that's going to remain intact for repayment. But anyone who takes out a new loan until the end of June 30th would have a 5-year repayment period. And then they added back in the payroll tax deferment has been restored. So you can do a PPP loan and also have that a deferment option, right? Which is richer, really. Let me tell you a couple things just to keep in mind. When this was passed 417-1 in the House, we thought it would go to the Senate and it would go great, but they found some technical corrections they wanted, and there were 2 technical corrections. One is around the 60-40, which is the way it's written is that it could mean, if you interpret it this way, that if you have 59%, then you wouldn't get loan forgiveness. You have to get to 60. So that's one technical correction. The second technical correction really is around the safe harbor of employees, right? So one of the things they want to be certain is that that you don't just get 100% loan forgiveness if you don't bring any employees back at all. And that's not the same Joe that maybe you had to furlough, but it could be Joe versus Bob, et cetera. That will be addressed in a second bill. We got held up since yesterday with 2 senators, and the final one was Johnson, who I will call out. And in the last hour or 2, there was a lot of negotiation, and it was extraordinary. And this is when the National Restaurant Association and the state association is so powerful together, because all the states were working hard. And just so you know, Senator Cruz and Senator Cornyn were incredibly supportive. And that's really important because our senators were really on board. But there was some horse trading at the last minute. And what Johnson wanted confirmation is that Senator Johnson, people could not in October, November, December, get new loans. And that was never the intent. So my message to everyone listening, if you did not take a Paycheck Protection Program loan and you would like to, you have until June 30th. There's still roughly $100 million in the program. And so this gives you a window and then 24 weeks to use that money. So for everyone who was holding their breath, because we had a number of our big restaurants today that literally their covered period ended tomorrow or the next day. So some of you are probably going to say, when's the president going to sign it? And we expect that to be pretty immediate because everyone knows the clock is ticking. And so this is just, again, another great win and example of why, it's so important we listen to you all and then take your battle forward and take it either locally or to the national team. So really, really good day.
I also just have to plug that this would not have happened without restaurants in Texas particularly, but then all over the nation, coming together and demanding change. The advocacy behind this bill is so impressive, and it's why we were able to get a bill from 2 freshman congressmen all the way through the finish line, at a time when Congress hardly agrees on anything. So this is truly an astounding moment, and I just want to emphasize that it only happened because of the advocacy efforts that, frankly, Emily and TRA led on. So just thank you to all of you for sticking with us and for emailing and calling your reps when we asked you to, because it's why we're here today.
Yeah, good stuff. Does anyone have anything else, Anna, anything else on our opening? And we posted everything. We'll do a nice update tonight to everyone, but we always want to just jump on because we know the executive order is, here, and this is not easy to read through. So we want to just always make ourselves available to give you all as much information as we can.
You're on mute, Anna.
Okay, I'm over here now. No, I just checked Twitter and Facebook and Zoom, and it looks like we've answered everyone's questions right now. I think they're just trying to absorb everything. So like Emily said, we will be providing some breakdown on what all this means. We will probably share a drink momentarily with each other because I think we should. But no, I think we're good unless Kelsey, it looks like you want to say something more.
Yeah, I was going to add that we'll update the Texas Restaurant Promise and the Texas Bar Promise and get that out to everyone. So please be on the lookout for that. We continue to ask restaurants to post that and bars, because it's really been a very effective tool.
Exactly. Perfect. Emily?
Yeah, just, I think what's great about this team and all of you is, we celebrate this, and then tomorrow's a new day and we're going to be on to the next issue. And so, one of the things I did want to mention is that the current waivers, so retail, the ability for you to sell prepackaged food, alcohol, that all stays in place. So just in case you're wondering, that all stays in place, and we've already are lining up for the session how to make those legal, legislatively forever. And so that is absolutely already on our radar, and we're going to make sure, especially curbside alcohol, it's become quite popular and something that's been a big revenue driver. And I guess I'll just end with, if you're unsure, please reach out to us. We try to be as open, and we know most of us are working endless hours, this entire team. So if we can just answer questions, or you're unsure, or you hear something and you're, how do I do this or how do I do that? Just go to, is it TRA Communications, Anna?
Just
because
communications.
communications@tra.org.
In the thing.
Okay. I'm going to get it wrong, but I want to make sure because then we all get access to that. So that way we can get your questions answered. So communications@txrestaurant.org. That's super easy. I don't know why I don't know that. But that way we can get back to your questions. So let's step through this together. Let's again, we're going forward, guys. And I just want to say, I'm really grateful to Governor Abbott and his team. I just feel like the strike force and Governor Abbott and the people that work with him right now are, we're getting ahead, and we're definitely, other states are looking at Texas and how well we've reopened. And I just thank all of you because you're doing a great job. You really are.
Awesome. Great. We'll post this later, guys, and we'll send out the email as well. And again, if you have any questions, we're here for you. Have a good night.
Thanks, team. Bye.